DreAllDay.com.
Tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any of us to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together in one bundle, one package, one mindset, one philosophy, one book. This masterclass, this daily masterclass, in case you didn't know, that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is what I would do differently if I was doing college all over again. Now, this is another in this series of what I would do differently topics. So I'm talking about things that I have already done, but what I would do differently if I had the knowledge and the experience that I have now, which would make it impossible because it would be a whole different situation had I had the same knowledge and experience. Might not have even done some of these same things, but we're gonna go along with the gimmick and the way that the question is formulated. Now, for those of y'all who don't know my college background, I come from the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I actually I was offered a partial scholarship, I think for 50% of tuition or something, 50% of something, to go to Morehouse College, actually coming out of George Washington Carver High School of Engineering and Science in Philadelphia, PA, when I graduated from high school in the year 2000. And I thought I was gonna be going to Morehouse for the rest of my senior year. I got offered that sometime in the spring. And for the rest of my senior year of high school, I was telling everybody, hey, I'm going to Morehouse. I've been accepted to a whole bunch of colleges, but I didn't have a reason to pick any one of them. So when Morehouse offered that, then that's some money. So I said, yeah, I'm gonna go to Morehouse. But then my parents broke the news to me shortly before, either before or right after graduation from high school, that we can't send you to Morehouse because the remaining 50% that we would have to pay is so much, because being an out-of-state student and Morehouse just being a high cost school, the tuition and all the expenses were very high for an out-of-state student. They said we would be in debt for the rest of our lives if we had to pay back whatever loans we would take out to send you to Morehouse. And you're not going to be able to get those kind of loans because you don't have any credit, and they're not going to give you enough to pay for what it would cost for you to actually go to Morehouse. So I ended up as a last second change. My parents said, well, you've been accepted to all of these schools. Why don't you go to Penn State University and go to a branch campus? And I actually went to Penn State Abington, which is a branch campus that is right outside of the city of Philadelphia. I went there as a freshman, walked on and played basketball there. Then the summer after my freshman year, got recruited to go play basketball. Went to another branch campus of Penn State University called Penn State Altoona, which is about 4 hours away from Philadelphia. It's about 40 minutes away from the main campus in State College, PA, which is like right smack in the middle of the state of Pennsylvania. And I did my last 3 years of college at Penn State Altoona, so I have a business degree from Penn State University. Because if you graduate from any Penn State campus, the degree is just Penn State. Now, you might have went to a different branch, but the degree is Penn State. So all that being said, now you know what I did in college. And in college, I played on the basketball team and did my thing there, and then went on and played professional sports. So all that being said, here's what I would do differently if I was going back to college. Let's just assume that I did went to the same campuses, the same years, and played the sports and all that. What would I do differently within that framework? Because if I had a chance to do the whole thing over, I might not even went to Penn State. But again, let's just say that I did. How would I do things differently? Number one thing I would do differently if I was doing college all over again right now, I would socialize more. Yes, I would socialize more. I would dip in and out of more circles of people. I would go to more parties. And when we went to parties in college, we did drink. I don't drink now at all, but in college I did drink. We drank, what did we drink? We get the Vladimir vodka for the weekend. The bottle was like $12 and the hell was down for the weekend. That was very, very cheap vodka, but I didn't know what good vodka tasted like, so it wasn't cheap to me. I mean, we knew it was cheap, but we weren't spending money on anything else because we didn't have it. So we did the Vladimir vodka. When we got tired of that, we'd mess with gin for a couple of weekends. When we felt like splurging, we would get a bottle of Bacardi 151 rum. I don't suggest anybody experiment with that, because that shit is like, I don't even know what to even call drinking Bacardi 151. When you drink something and it burns going down your esophagus, it's probably not good for you to have too much of it. But that stuff is, all right, if you're trying to be done for the night, you drink that. If you're trying to actually go out and enjoy yourself and remember the night, don't drink Bacardi 151 or anything close to that level of proof of alcohol. Again, you could do your research on that. But we did that. What else did we drink? anything lighter than that didn't really do nothing for us. And then we would drink beer, not because we like beer, but when you already buzzed off vodka, beer is like drinking water or drinking soda. So then there would be, and when I was in college, that was natural ice. That was what the frat parties had, natural ice beer. So we would drink that. Those are the things that we would do in the party days. I don't regret any of that. It was fun. And that's why I said I would do more of it. I would do more of all of those things. I would make sure I don't get crazy with the drinking. I never got crazy drunk. I threw up a couple times, like I can count on my fingers. But never got never blacked out or nothing crazy like that. I saw that happen to people, but it never happened to me. None of the people that I was hanging with. We'd be buzzed enough that you might have a hangover the next day. I had probably about 3 or 4 hangovers in my college time. But again, I wasn't a crazy drinker. We would just drink. So I would party, drink, talk to more girls, go out to more parties, get invited to more, go to other college campuses and party with them. I would do a whole lot more of all of that stuff. Now, my Facebook profile, when it's not the profile that I have now, I don't even use my Facebook profile at all. So if you send me a friend request on Facebook and I don't accept it, don't take it personal. It's because I don't use my Facebook profile, so I'm not accepting anything. But my profile used to say, because it asks you, what did you major in college? I don't know what it says now. Maybe it still says this. But it used to say that my major was basketball and socializing. And the reason why I said that, even though my degree is in business with a focus in management and marketing, is because what I spent most of my time focused on in college was playing basketball and socializing. I feel like I did what I needed to do as far as basketball went, but socializing wise, I could have did more. I could have went to more parties. There were parties that I could have went to that I didn't go to. There were girls I could have talked to that for whatever reason I didn't talk to. There are times I could have been out doing stuff and I was in my dorm or in my apartment doing less stuff. So I would have socialized a whole lot more. And this is all this is the truth. The things that I focused on most in college, that I just said, socializing and basketball, I feel like I did what I needed to do basketball wise, given the situation. But socializing, more parties, more girls, go to more campuses, meet more people, spend less time pretending to be a serious student. Now I want to be clear. For any of the parents who's listening to this right now, or any students who are listening to this right now, I'm not telling you that you should do this. All right, I'm just telling you what I would have done differently given my circumstances. You are in college in a whole different era from when I was in college, and your circumstances are probably, being that you're a different person than me, your circumstances are probably completely different from what my circumstances were. I spent time pretending to be a serious student in college. There were times where I buckled down and said, all right, let me be serious and not go out this Thursday and this Friday, and I'm gonna just work on this paper, or I'm gonna try to study for this upcoming test. I would have instead, you know what I would have done instead of trying to pretend to be a serious student, those let's say handful of Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays that I didn't go out and party, I would have instead partied. And now, again, knowing what I know now, I knew I had the ability to do enough to get by in college. That's how I got, let me back up, I'm kind of jumping around here, but in college, I had the ability to do enough work to get by. I started doing that when I was in high school. My parents didn't like that, but I did it. And I went to college and I did the exact same thing. For like 2 semesters, I worked hard. And I only worked hard for those 2 semesters because I was on the campus and didn't know anybody and didn't understand the college partying life. So those are 2 semesters that I would have spent partying, knowing now what I didn't know then. So pretending to be a serious college student, even after those 2 semesters, I lost opportunities when I could have socialized, which had created much more memories and much more value for my life than anything that I would have gotten in the GPA. I graduated with a GPA of, don't hold me to this number, it may be inaccurate, but I know it was a C average. It was like a 2.6, something like that, something around that number. I don't even know what that equates to. It doesn't even matter because I got the degree. It's framed in my mom's house, my mom and dad's house in Philadelphia to this very day, last time I checked, but it doesn't even matter. It was a 2.6 something. That was pretty much the kind of student. I was about a 2.6 something student when it came to my effort. I gave enough effort just so I can get by, so I could play ball, stay eligible, and do my thing off the court, social wise. And what I would do in order to make sure that I pass as a student, again, with the information that I have now, the internet being what it is now, I would leverage money. Didn't have that much money in college, but I would leverage some money and pay people to do my homework or get me the information or tell me everything that I need to know to make sure that I could at least get a C on this test. I would have leveraged money to get that information, and there would have been some great entrepreneurs out there making a ton of money. Anybody who was smart enough would have made a whole lot of money on the internet, should be making a whole lot of money on the internet to this very day in colleges, making money, getting paid by people like me who didn't want to pretend to be a serious student but needed to at least graduate and or stay eligible. Help them out. You give them the information, they give you the money. Win-win situation, and the teacher feels like they taught a whole bunch of people because look at all these kids passing the class. Win-win-win situation. Everybody wins. The college gets paid. Nobody loses in that situation. And who cares about the information because none of it was relevant to what I ended up doing when I got out of school anyway. All that being said, let me give you a disclaimer. Of everything that I just said, here is the disclaimer. I knew where I was going after school. I knew that I was going to play professional basketball, and I knew that this internet thing was going to become something. Mind you, this is 2004 that I graduated from college. So the internet existed, but it was nothing like what it became. All right, it was right before blogs became more ubiquitous. This is before we had a phrase called social media. This is before we had something called content. This is before we had branding. This is before self-publishing. This is before all of this stuff. But all of that stuff happened over the next 1 to 10 years. So it was perfect timing for me, but I saw that this was going to happen. So I knew where I was going, and I also knew that no one in college could teach me a damn thing about playing basketball overseas or about how I could take advantage of the internet because nobody knew about those things. Now if you're trying to go into something that people do know about, let's say you want to be a lawyer or an engineer, or you want to start your own company, or you want to get into, I don't know, you want to become a teacher. Any of those things, there are people at your college who know about those things. There are groups for those things. There are people who can give you specific, highly targeted, very useful information on those topics. You may need to make some different decisions than the decisions that I would have made, okay? I wanna make sure I'm putting that disclaimer out there. So the parents out there, you might be mad at me for the first half of point number 1, but you should be thanking me for the second half of point number 1, all right? When I'm giving y'all this disclaimer. So you may need some of those professor recommendations or job offers off your internship. You might need those things that I didn't need. So make sure you are considering your specific situation when you're listening to me here. I wanna make sure that when I'm telling you what I would have done, that does not mean you should go do it. All right, it means understand what I would have done, understand why I would have done it, because I'm giving you the explanation as to why I would have done it. And then you need to take this information and ask yourself, based on my life, not Dre's life, but your life when you're talking, based on my life, where can I use any of this? Where does any of this apply for me? How can I utilize any of this? If the answer is none, then you can just accept it as entertainment. Point number 2. Today's topic is what I would do differently if I was going back to college today. I would make more connections outside of my normal circle. Now, this would also tie into the socializing thing. But when I say socializing, what I meant was meeting girls and partying. But when I say here, point number 2, make more connections outside of my normal circle, I mean maybe even being a part of certain groups, like extracurricular activities, things like that. Not necessarily partying. This is stuff we could do during the daytime. Stuff that was sanctioned on campus activities. All right? Those kind of things. I would have did more of that and made more connections. I knew everyone in my circles. In my circles, I knew all the athletes. We all knew each other. There were certain females that we all knew, and all the black people knew each other. Anyone who paid attention to sports, we knew each other. But there were also many valuable people sitting right across from me in classes who were not in those circles. They didn't really pay attention to sports. They were not black. They didn't know any of that stuff that we were doing. They weren't at any of the parties that I was going to, but that doesn't mean they weren't valuable people. Some of those people to this day might be politicians, they may be business owners, they might be lawyers, they might be doctors, they might know some people who it would be great for me to know right now because it would help me solve some problems that I got going on, help me handle some challenges that I have, but I'll never know because I didn't know those individuals. I really stayed amongst my circles. Those people that I mentioned, athletes, certain females, all the black people, anyone who paid attention to sports, that's pretty much everybody I knew in college. Now I want to be clear, if you go to a big enough college, that's going to be a hell of a lot of people. Or that group that I just gave you, that was a lot of people. There's a lot of people that I know from college and a lot of people who knew me just in those circles. But I felt like I could have expanded my circle and known more people and had positive relations with them. Because as I've told you in many master classes here, we talked about relationships, that there is the increased number of positive relationships does not have diminishing returns. All right, the more positive relationships you have with the more people of substance out there in the world, the better. All right, there is nothing that you lose by having more positive relationships with people who have something going on. I have some type of substance within them. We talked about being a person of substance in master classes on this show. Let me make sure I'm referring you to those. So we got so many here, I gotta make sure I'm referring you to stuff. Masterclass number 1286 is how to be a person of substance. Now we talked about relationships many times here on this show, but let me give you a few. I told you in masterclass number 1234 to build strong relationships, stop keeping score. In masterclass number 231, directly related to what I just said, build relationships before you need them. One of the best values that you get of college is that you have a whole bunch of people who are around the same age, who all have the same aim of, in some way, shape, or form, bettering themselves for the rest of life, all clustered into one space, one confined space for 4 years or more or less. Right? That is a great time for you to make connections, because everybody there, not everybody's going to become somebody. Some of those people are going to become nobody. Some people are going to fall off the mat. Some people are going to die. But some of those people who are in there, they're going to become somebodies. They're going to have power. They're going to have influence. They're going to be people that you wish you had a relationship with back then, later on. So you want to build those relationships before you even need them. In masterclass number 1489, I gave you some relationship building principles. In masterclass 1439, key to building relationships is putting the time in. Being in college is a great time to put in time to building relationships with other people, because they're all around. They're all in the same space. Ain't nobody going anywhere. You all love being there. You all have a little bit of autonomy. This is a great time to build relationships. I would have done a whole lot more of that. One of the greatest assets that college offers is that you have a bunch of people from different backgrounds with the same, again, aim of getting better, all in one confined space for the same period of time. It's a pretty big space, but it's a confined space, a college campus, depending on the size of the school you go to. I would have diversified my connections. I would have made some more friends with some people who, again, were not black, didn't care about sports, and were not athletes. It would have diversified my connections a lot, and it would have given me more contacts in the world today had I put that time in back then. Now, I think my contacts were quite diverse, but I would have done even more than what I did back then. Again, but I didn't have this information back then that I have now. And that's why you can benefit from it, even though I can't. Point number 3. Today's topic is what I would have done differently if I were to do college all over again right now. Third thing I would have done is I would have been more strategic about the classes that I took. Now, finally, after all this talking, we're finally actually going to talk about something that happens in class. All right. Doing college, of course, when you are in a major, probably your last 2 years, at least with the major that I was in the school that I was at, business major at Penn State, your last 2 years is when you really got to buckle down and really start taking all your necessary business classes. Maybe even the spring semester of your sophomore year, you got to start going into making sure you're taking those business classes so you can graduate, quote unquote, on time, which is I graduated in 4 years flat. I did one summer. But making sure that you can graduate on time, you got to start taking all those business classes so that you're good to actually get your degree. So I would have thought a little bit more about my future, because I knew that I was going to play sports professionally. Didn't know how, but I knew that I was going to. I didn't really think, all right, Dre, after sports, what am I actually going to be interested in? What skills am I going to need? What tools do I want to develop? What things do I want to learn that could actually help me in my future that I might not be thinking about right now? I would have maybe asked some people, maybe some professors, hey, this is what I want to do in my life, play basketball. But when it's over, I don't know what I'm going to do after that. What kind of classes do you think I can take? What electives can I sign up for? What groups can I be a part of? What people should I get to know? Maybe what should I change my major to, given what I want to do, Mr. or Mrs. Professor? And I would have asked a question like that. I did not ask that type of question. I did not have that type of insight. I did not ever think that I might want to ask anybody anything like that. But again, you can benefit from it if you happen to be a student right now, because I was never thinking about these things. I would have figured out what other areas of interest I had. I knew I wanted to go into the business world. I didn't know exactly what, because again, the internet wasn't even the internet at that time. Nobody could predict that it was going to become what we have right now in 2002, 2003, 2004. I would have learned what I could about other areas that I know I was interested in, such as computers, the internet, if they even had classes for that, maybe some coding, more things about marketing, persuasive writing, debate, communications. These are things that I was already interested in and I still use to this very day. I would have maybe thought about taking some classes in those areas instead of what I did do. Any of you who's in the sports arena, you know that this happens in colleges. And any of you who didn't know, I'm gonna put you on the game right now, is that athletes and their coaches, believe it or not, usually put athletes into classes that, of course, are enough for them to be eligible to play their sport. You had to be a full-time student to play a sport in college, at least by NCAA rules. And at the same time, classes that are so quote-unquote easy that the course load, the workload of taking that class and passing said classes is not so much that it distracts the athlete from doing the main thing that got them on that campus, which is playing sports. Sports athletes do this all the time. Coaches do this all the time. I'm not saying every coach does it. So if you're a coach, I'm not saying you, but you know the coaches who do these things. If you're a parent and your child is an athlete, depending on what sport you play, athletes do get driven and steered towards doing these things. I've known of coaches and athletes who did these exact things. They were taking these classes that were very easy classes, very elective level classes that would never lead to a degree, would never lead to a graduation because there is no degree and no real rigorous coursework had been taken, just so that student could stay eligible because the classes were really easy, quote unquote easy, and they could stay, playing their sport, which is the main thing that got them on that campus in the first place. What I would have done, now I didn't do that myself. I actually did get a degree, like I told you, in 4 years flat with one summer that I took, and that's because I changed my major when I transferred schools. The kind of classes that I may have actually paid attention to and applied myself in, I would have taken more of those. I took a lot of classes that I didn't really care about. I didn't apply myself because I didn't care about the information. I didn't like the way that it was taught. I didn't like the professors. I didn't think it had any bearing on where I was going in my future, and God damn it, I was right about all those things. It had no bearing on my future. So I would have looked around and maybe found if there was a professor or there was a class that did fit that description. But if there wasn't, then I guess I would have had to just bite the bullet on this one, maybe take some online courses. But we didn't have online courses back then. So there's a lot of questions that I would have to ask about this doing things over thing to make sure exactly how we would do it. But I think you get the gist of what I'm saying here. So let's recap today's class, which is what I would do differently if I was doing college over again. Again, it's another that theme of what I would do different given the knowledge, knowing the knowledge now that I did not know back then. Number one thing I would do, most important, I would socialize more. I would go out to more parties. I would meet more girls. I would go to more campuses and meet other people there. I would spend less time trying to be or pretending to be a serious student because I never was in the first place. I wouldn't even waste time pretending to be one because I know that's not what I was. Disclaimer about that, I knew where I was going when school was over, and I did not need a professor. I didn't need any professional recommendations or professor recommendations. I didn't need an internship, even though I had to do one. I bullshitted through it. You might need these. So make sure you're not doing what I'm doing just because I said it, but considering if it makes sense for you. Point number 2, I'll make more connections outside of my normal circle. I knew everyone in my circle. I knew the athletes, certain females, all the black people, anybody who paid attention to sports. But there were valuable people sitting right in my classes that I didn't know because they were not in my circles. I would have spent more time dipping in and out of those circles and going to their parties too. And point number 3, I'll be more strategic about the classes that I took. Now we're finally talking about school here. I would have thought a little bit more about my future after sports and learn what I could about other areas of interest like the internet, computers, marketing, writing, debate, communications, kind of stuff that I was already interested in and that I would know I would need in my future. Again, I wouldn't have known that then, but again, this whole thing is about knowing what I know now. And these are things that I might have actually applied myself in and actually paid attention in class. Now you need to think about what you would do moving forward in your college career. And if you have not read my book, Work on Your Game, Using the Pro Athlete Mindset to Dominate Your Game in Business, Sports, and Life, gives you the entire framework of how I created what I created from the very beginnings up through my college years, through my professional athlete career, and to my professional career as an entrepreneur. Get that book at workonyourgamebook.com. Workonyourgamebook.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.